The NHL's buyout period is underway, and while everyone around the NHL was sitting there saying Matt Murray is the prime candidate for a buyout in Toronto, maybe we shouldn't have been looking at Murray, and we should have been looking at TJ Brodie? What's up, Leafs fans, and welcome back to Leafs Digest. It is the dog days of summer, and yes, the NHL insiders seem to have nothing better to do than to just make stuff up off the top of their heads, and yes, you could guess it, I am talking about our friend Frank Spaghetti from over at the Daily Faceoff, who just continues to pull stuff out of his ass when it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, we'll get into that, we'll get into how insane this report is from Seravalli, but we will discuss whether or not there's any opportunity here for this Leafs team to actually move on to Brodie during the course of this video, so don't worry about that. But that being said, before I get into everything else, I do want to remind people, if you are not subscribed here to this Leafs Digest channel, please make sure to go and do so now. Hit that like button, hit subscribe. Click that bell so that you turn on notifications so you don't miss a single video that comes out here, so that you can see when we break down these nonsensical reports that start to come out from these so-called insiders around the NHL. Because I don't know what that was, but that was not a report. That was the Rumour boys making stuff up and just throwing crap at the wall and seeing what stuck. So we'll get to all of that. But first, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications on this Leafs Digest channel. So, let's get into it. First and foremost, let's talk about the Rumour. Yes, credit to our man, Frank Seravalli. This guy just gives us endless Leafs content. It's actually ridiculous. I should be thankful at this point for how much garbage he just throws out there into the world when it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs, because it seems like maybe less than 5% of it is even a tingent of the truth or reality of what is going on. So, thank you, Frank, for doing this yet again, because you've given me yet another opportunity to debunk yet another rumor that you've thrown out there about how ridiculous this proposal is. And if you haven't seen it already, here is the proposal. There's a couple of sneaky buyouts out there, and one that I have in the back of my mind is TJ Brodie of the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's a $0 cap charge for this upcoming season if you were to buy Brodie out of the last year of his deal. 2 seasons from now, it would be a $2.5 million cap charge. Again, theoretically, when the cap is going up by $7 to $8 million. So if you could move off of TJ Brodie's $5 million and have a $0 charge, yes, you need to replace him, but you could potentially give Brad Treliving some money to play with. So there's a report essentially saying, yeah, you buy out TJ Brodie, you're going to get no penalty this year, $2.5 million next year, but that'll be negligible because the cap will have gone up so much it won't matter. Okay. Understood in terms of the cap part, in terms of you're looking at that and you're going to free up the $5 million. But I sat there and I still said, that's ridiculous. He's got a year left on his contract. He's not on a bad contract. I don't think he's a bad defenseman here for the Leafs. Could he be upgraded on, or could you get something back that's different than the way TJ Brodie plays? For sure. But to suggest buying him out, that seems absurd. So I said, you know what? Maybe I'm looking at this wrong. Maybe if I go out there and see what other smart hockey minds are saying or thinking about this situation, maybe I'll have a different perspective. Maybe I'll be proven wrong on this one. Turns out I was not. I turned on TSN Overdrive yesterday. I'm listening to the radio, and across the board, Mike Johnson, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie McLennan, and Brian Hayes all came to the same conclusion. This is ridiculous. Why would you buy out TJ Brodie? Then I'm turning on Craig Button last night. It says he's talking to Jay Onrait about the possibility of buying out TJ Brodie. And I sat there and I said, okay, maybe he'll give some insight. Now, mind you, Craig didn't necessarily say no to this, but I think Craig politely said not a buyout, but they might look to move on from him. If you go and watch the video yourselves, you can possibly come to your own conclusions, but he effectively says a lot of stuff that ultimately means nothing, so he said a lot of nothing in more ways than one. He just said, these are the facts. Buying out Brodie saves you $5 million this year and hits you for $2.5 million next year, and the cap will be going up. The team needs to change the mix of players and defensemen here. Never really said Brodie was the guy that you had to change. He just said you kind of have to change them. He said getting $5 million off the books opens up an opportunity for Brad Treliving to go out and acquire a guy, sign a guy, trade for a guy, whatever it is. Also, just another fact, not wrong there. He never explicitly says to buy out Brodie, but he kind of just leans in the direction of, hey, maybe they'd move on from him. It more just seemed like he was politely saying, I don't think so, but they could move on from him, and this is what a buyout does. So, you can make of that what you will. You can go watch the video of Craig talking about that and come to your own conclusions there. But that was kind of where I came to. So there's the first piece, the rumor that came out, the piece from Frank Seravalli where he's talking about it. And I just went to find some other sources to say, hey, maybe this is a possibility. Seems like everyone's kind of on the same page that doesn't really make much sense. So now let's talk about the idea of actually moving on from TJ Brodie. Could the Leafs move on from TJ Brodie? What would that might look like? Would it be in a buyout? What is the situation here? Well, first and foremost, here's a tweet from Terry Koshin, the Toronto Sun. Shout out Terry. I do like Terry a lot. Love his reporting. I think he is very accurate when it comes to inside information regarding the Leafs, rumors that are going on and stuff like that. But he tweeted out, source, in quotations, no truth to the buyout rumors regarding the Leafs and TJ Brodie. So there you go. There is another Leafs insider just saying, this isn't happening. He's not getting bought out. Look, this made no sense from the jump. Why would you spend the money to do that? The other thing here is, look, TJ Brodie is a guy that you could 100%, not even 99%, 100% get some type of asset back for. Anything. You could trade this guy for a 2024 7th round pick, and that is better than buying him out. Because I'll tell you what, you don't get the cap hit of that, you don't pay him the money for it, and you get a pick. It is quite literally better than buying him out. A guy like Matt Murray, to move on from that contract, you probably are going to have to swap some type of pick, maybe downgrade a pick. The one that I look at here, shout out Jason Cooper from the Rink Rat Report, he's the one who brought it to my attention. If you trade Matt Murray to San Jose, you could trade back 7 picks, take San Jose's 2nd round pick, they get your first, they take Murray. That's the opportunity to move on from it there. TJ Brodie, you are not begging people to take that contract. If you called the Edmonton Oilers tomorrow, they'd probably give you a whole bunch of stuff. When the Leafs traded for Mark Giordano at the deadline a couple years ago, they gave up 2 second rounds and a 3rd. If you are sitting here telling me right now that TJ Brodie cannot get you anything in a trade, I would tell you you've lost your mind. TJ Brodie has at least some type of value to get back. Look, I am just on the fence here on TJ Brodie. I don't necessarily have a strong opinion of whether or not they should keep him. I'm not sitting here saying get him out the door. I'm not sitting here saying do not touch him, don't trade him. If you have an opportunity to upgrade on him, I think you should go for it. Brodie, we've seen declining over the last 2 years. I think that's undeniable in terms of what we've seen. And people can sit here and talk about some of the numbers, some of the analytics. Well, guess what? You know who else was an analytics darling? Justin Hall. The analytics community loved what he brought, but you know who didn't? The eye test. And ultimately what ended up prevailing was the eye test on that one. I think in a lot of situations, you kind of have to go at it with maybe a 50-50 sense or 60-40 or 70-30, but you have to include pieces of one another. I'm not sitting here telling you TJ Brodie's being bad, but TJ Brodie has been declining. We've seen him with a little bit of slower play. We've seen him making worse and worse turnovers in situations. We've also seen him get lost a little bit defensively in situations where he wasn't before. And now, that's not to say he's come back down to the level of guys who were just average defensemen in the NHL. It's more just compared to what he was as a very, very good defensive defenseman. He's not really at that level anymore. He's kind of just dropped down where he's not that level of, the best word I could use is maybe perfect in that sense. He is much more flawed now than he was when we originally saw him join the Leafs team. That's not a bad thing. It's more just, hey, he's dropped off a little bit. He's got a year left, $5 million. The other thing I want to remind people here or make people aware of, if you didn't already know, Brad Treliving tried to move on from TJ Brodie before. Kyle Dubas and Brad Treliving had a deal in place that would have effectively sent Nazem Kadri to Calgary and brought TJ Brodie back to the Maple Leafs. Nazem Kadri turned that deal down because at the time he didn't want to be traded to Calgary. So then Dubas goes and trades him to Colorado. We get Tyson Barrie and Alex Kerfoot, yada, yada, yada. We know how that story ends. But Treliving was ready to move on from Brodie in that moment. It didn't work out. And it wasn't because of the Leafs. It was because of Nazem Kadri. And then, later, Brad Treliving lets TJ Brodie walk as a UFA. He obviously saw something there that he wasn't completely in love with. And I know people will sit here and say, well, Treliving did this, Treliving did that, blah, blah, blah. You could pull up a bunch of mistakes. Same with Kyle Dubas. Same with Joe Sakic. Like, these guys make mistakes. Steve Yzerman has made mistakes. Mistakes happen as a general manager. It happens. It is what the other moves that you make, how you bounce around it. Well, I'll tell you what. Brad Treliving has built an incredible decor in Calgary. He identified Brodie wasn't going to be a piece of that anymore. And in my opinion, I think he went and upgraded on what Brodie and Gio were there in Calgary and built an even better decor after the fact. So, could he get moved? Possibly. Could he be a Leaf next year? Maybe not. Maybe he would be. But I'll tell you one thing. It is not happening with a buyout. I think that is one of the most ridiculous reports we could have ever seen, and Frank Spaghetti just continues to just smudge his own name here around the NHL with these insane reports day after day after day. Frank, I don't know what happened. I don't know if Kyle Dubas pissed you off, but oh my goodness, dude, stop throwing crap at the wall like this because it is just stinkier and stinkier and stinkier, and every day it's just slipping right off faster and faster and faster, and you are looking like more and more of a goofball. I'm sorry to say it, Frank, but if you continue to put out reports like this, my goodness, your word will mean nothing very quickly. That's the reality of it. Leafs fans, let me know what you guys think about the TJ Brodie buyout situation. If you are in on that, would you buy out TJ Brodie? Would you trade him? What could you get back in a trade package? Or would you leave TJ Brodie a part of this Leafs decor for at least this next season? I want to hear it all in the comments. And while you're at it, you might as well hit that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications here on the Leafs Digest channel. There's no reason not to. It takes 2 seconds to do it. You just click those buttons. You get notified every single time we go live on this channel or more videos like this drop. So Leafs fans, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Enjoy your summers. Much more content like this coming. Keep believing.